r/NoSleep. Posted by u/Theeaglestrikes. My dad bought a video game called The Real World. I want to stop playing it. I'm selling it, my dad said. I can buy it from you. I pleaded. I've saved up a bit of money. Is that supposed to impress me? He snarled. A kitchen porter. Is that the dream career I imagined for my son? You're 18. It's time to be an adult. So, no, I don't give a shit about the money. You're not buying the Xbox from me. You're too old for video games. My dad is an abusive asshole, so I didn't try to reason with him. I knew the battle was over before it even began. Out of context, I might sound like a spoiled brat, but that brief snippet of conversation was one of my dad's better moments. I could talk about the time he smashed up my vinyl collection with a cricket bat because it was, and I quote, pussy music. I could talk about the time he brandished a broken beer bottle as a weapon. Yeah. He's a twat. But he's right. I'm hardly a roaring success. I would move out, but my salary couldn't buy me a fucking shed. Mom died a few years ago, and my sister's at university, so I have to deal with the prick on my own. Of course, that's the least of my worries. I'm terrified of the real world. No, I'm not talking about the real world. I'm talking about the video game. Oh, you haven't heard of it? Yeah, that's the weird thing. I can't find it online. I can't find it anywhere. But my dad found it. Happy birthday, he grumbled. Yesterday, it was my 19th birthday. The Xbox incident was a distant memory, so you can imagine my shock when I opened the clumsily wrapped present before me and found myself looking at a PC game. You can play it on the computer in the study, my dad said. I was bewildered. For a few precious moments, I truly believed that he had a change of heart. The next sentence shattered that naive illusion. It's supposed to teach you about life, he explained. Maybe it'll get you off your arse. He strolled to the living room and sat on his own arse, switching on the TV. Hypocrite. But as double-edged as the sword seemed, I resolved to play the video game and force myself to enjoy it. I wanted to devote every waking hour to it, even if it were a piece of crap. I wanted to waste my life on it, just to spite my father. I read the front cover of the game as I walk to the study. The Real World, a Simulation. Hardly a descriptive title. The picture on the front displayed a man's black silhouette on a white background. It was hardly a vibrant or enticing graphic, but of course it had been enough to catch the attention of my duller dad. I slotted the disc into my computer's CD drive and installed the game. The main menu was a blank screen with only one button, play. There were no options for settings, help, or even basic information about the real world. Crappy 2-quid game, I mumbled to myself. I clicked play. The game had a third-person perspective, and I was playing as the little silhouetted man from the cover. I found myself in a white, expansive world. Again, it was much like the image on the CD case. There were 4 different metrics at the bottom of the screen. There was a green bar with the word life beneath it, a blue bar with the word water beneath it, an orange bar with the word food beneath it, and a yellow bar with the word energy beneath it. A small text box was also displayed at the top of the screen. It read, "Welcome to the real world. Survive." The text box disappeared, and some small buildings appeared on the not-so-distant horizon. Everything was black and white. The buildings were simply outlined objects. I had to admit that I was intrigued. It had an original aesthetic. Okay, I said to myself. Perhaps this minimalistic game has potential. There were 3 buildings. Each was a simplistic structure. The first had a sign that read, "Food." There were 2 long window panes and a door. Through the shop front, I could see long aisles of shelving and a man behind the counter at the back. The second building had a sign that read medical. The windows were white and did not display its interior. The third building didn't have a sign, but the thatched roof and picket fence suggested it was my character's house. It wasn't much of a world. 3 buildings in a seemingly infinite void of whiteness. I could see myself getting bored of the game mechanics quite quickly, but I decided to give the simplistic simulation a chance. I strolled through the door of the food shop and started to browse the NPC's fine selection of digital grub. That wasn't sarcasm. There was a surprisingly extensive range of food on offer. Whenever I stood before an item of food, a small pop-up box appeared on the screen, listing various details. For example, tomato pasta, ready meal. Salt, high. Sugar, medium. 500 calories. This game developer really wanted to create an authentic shopping experience, I thought to myself. But I went along with it because I was utterly fascinated by the minute details that the game had included. I filled up my shopping basket and walked up to the till. The cashier communicated via text boxes. "Good day, sir. Is that all?" he asked. There were two options, yes or no. I picked the former. "Fantastic. The total cost of your shop is 56 tokens, he replied. "Thank you." A -56 pop-up box flashed at the top of the screen for a few seconds. I had no idea how many tokens I owned. The game had not mentioned anything about currency of any kind. What are tokens? I wondered. And how do I earn more? I left the shop and strolled over to the medical building. When I tried to enter the door, however, a beep emitted from the speakers. Then, a text box explained, "Opening hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I looked at the time on my computer. 6:14 p.m. I hadn't expected it to be a real-time simulator. Still, I was content to skip the medical center. What I really wanted to explore was my house. I sprinted to the door, and it swung open. No need to lock one's door in the middle of white, featureless expanse, I supposed. My bemused demeanor quickly vanished when I stepped inside. "What the fuck?" I murmured. It was my house. My real house, I mean. With my heart pounding furiously in my chest, I explored every crevice of the outlined home. It was an exact replica, down to every last piece of furniture, picture frame, and room. Sweat poured down my face, and I started to descend into a full-blown panic. I'm not one to overreact to things, but I immediately had a dreadful feeling about this game. Something about the digital rendition of my real-life home had unnerved me. It felt like a violation. It felt intrusive. It felt sinister. I was interrupted by a rumbling in my belly. It was time to make dinner and confront my dad about what was happening. I thought it might be a fake game that he'd specifically designed to torture me. A second before I closed the game window, I noticed something odd. A text box appeared on the screen. "You're hungry. Time to unload your shopping and eat." It was a coincidence, surely? That was what I told myself at the time. Yet, a bitter chill coursed through my body. I closed the game and switched off my PC. No more of that nonsense. I bounded down the stairs and strolled into the kitchen to make dinner for my dad and me. I'm the cook. That's the condition I must fulfill to live in my dad's house rent-free. I often offer to pay rent, but he always changes the topic of conversation. The man loves power. And this fake simulation game, I decided, was simply his latest power trip. It's not real. I made a roast dinner, hoping to put my dad in a good mood. He'd barely seated himself before I grilled him for information. "Where did you find the game?" I asked. "Huh?" he mumbled. "Oh, some website. Are you learning some hard truths about reality, eh?" "Dad," I said. "Did you commission a custom game to be made? How much did it cost?" "What the fuck are you blabbering about?" he growled. "The house in the game. It's an exact replica of ours," I replied. "I actually think it's pretty cool. Fair play. Thanks for going to the effort." "I don't really understand the joke," my dad said. "Look, just Google the name of the game, okay? Jesus. I thought kids were supposed to be tech geniuses. But make sure you wash the dishes first. I'm going to bed." And that was the end of the conversation. I was a little surprised at myself for not thinking to Google the game immediately, actually. It didn't make any difference, though. There was nothing about the real world on the internet. I found an online forum that discussed all manner of dark practices, and some users suggested that veil breaking could untie my soul from this evil force. But I couldn't find anything about that practice online. I decided there was only one way to learn more. I had to keep playing. My stomach rumbled again. I just wolfed down an entire roast dinner, but I somehow felt even hungrier. As I loaded the game, I reached for some crisps and started to munch away. I finished them and still felt hungry. The real world picked up exactly where I left it. No main menu. No play button. I was still in the house. My stomach groaned. It was a little more insistent this time. I felt a stabbing pain in my gut. And that pop-up window lingered on the screen, telling me to feed my character. Coincidences usually make me chuckle, but this one didn't. Horrible thoughts swam in my busy mind. Horrible ideas of what might be happening to me. Ideas that would soon be confirmed. My character was still holding the bag of food. I strolled over to the fridge and selected the unload option. Then, browsing the options, I chose the tomato pasta ready meal. I microwaved it for a few minutes, plated it up, sat at the dinner table, and selected the pop-up eat option. My character started to eat, and his orange food bar suddenly filled up. He drank, and his blue water bar filled up. Much to my horror, I found that my belly stopped rumbling. I suddenly felt replenished. Worst of all, I could taste the food and water in my mouth. I jolted to my feet, falling backwards and taking my desk chair with me. I lay motionless for a few seconds. Then, I propped myself on my elbows and looked up at the monitor in a state of pure terror. My body was violently shaking, and my mind was starting to slip into a state of existential panic. What the fuck is happening? I thought. What the fucking fuck is happening? Another text box appeared at the top of the window. You only have 10 tokens. Would you like to earn more? The yes and no options had returned. I sprang to my feet, limbered up, took a deep breath, and picked up my desk chair. Sitting down, I selected the yes option. The text box updated. You can complete a challenge for 1,000 tokens. Do you accept? If this digital character truly were a voodoo doll of me, I would only have two options. I could run out of the tokens needed to buy digital food and starve to death in real life. Alternatively, I could blindly accept the challenge and stand a chance of surviving. I chose survival. Yes. The screen blackened for a whole minute. My body clenched and my breathing quickened. I watched in sheer dread, terrified that I'd broken the game and resigned myself to the fate of dying by thirst, starvation, or perhaps even sleep deprivation. I could only assume that I was linked to the doll in every way, shape, and form. The horrifying consequences of that truth only hit me when the challenge loaded. A timer appeared at the top of the screen. 5 o'clock. It started to count down. 5 minutes to achieve what, exactly? My silhouetted character returned, but he was now a white figure against a black background. White outlines of shapes started to appear on the screen. I soon realized that I was faced with an obstacle course. A text box briefly flashed. Watch your health and energy. Run. Time is slipping away. I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted down the long, narrow passageway before me. It was a rather derivative and stereotypical obstacle course, but when the stakes are life and death, those cliches start to become a little more petrifying. I paused, staring at the swinging X's that blocked my path. 4:16 on the timer. I didn't have time to think. I just had to act. I sprinted recklessly through the sea of rocking blades and held my breath until I safely made it to the other side. That wasn't so hard. I could do this. A watery, crocodile-filled pit, lined with lily pads? Easy. I leapfrogged my way across. 3:49. I could already see the doorway with finish above it. Just a few more obstacles. Why did I suddenly feel completely fatigued? My energy bar. It was empty. A text box popped up. You will be penalized for moving too quickly. Suddenly, my character was levitating in the air. I felt my stomach lurch, and I realized that I was no longer sitting on my desk chair. My body was starting to lift into the air, and I found myself suspended a few feet above the ground. I didn't want to call for help from my abusive father. He would have fled and never returned. Plus, for all I knew, he'd purposefully dabbled in some dark ritual to create this game. Instead, I bit my quivering lip so viciously that it drew warm blood, which started to trickle down my chin. A stream of tears broke through the floodgates, drenching my cheeks. I watched the character on my screen, waiting to see what horrendous fate awaited us. 3:17. To recover your energy, choose a handicap. I didn't understand the instruction, and then I saw two options on the screen. A. Lose 20 seconds on the timer. B. Twist an ankle. I couldn't afford to lose another 20 seconds. I was already wasting time. I stretched my hand forwards, still hovering in the air but desperately wrestling with the paranormal force that had suspended me. I managed to grab the mouse and wiggle it onto the second option. Twisting an ankle would be painful, but I had a terrible feeling that it might cost my life to lose the challenge and the tokens. I clicked. What followed was the most painful experience of my life. I expected a sprained ankle. What I was actually given was a mutilated ankle. The vehement entity which operated the game snapped my left ankle in a 180-degree rotation, leaving my foot facing the wrong direction and causing my bone to protrude through a bloody, gaping wound above my heel. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I screamed until I threw up. My dad shouted something from downstairs. I couldn't hear him over my agonized wailing. He didn't come to check on me. I collapsed into my desk chair, left leg rendered a shaking, useless mess. My character looked much the same. 251. Feeling faint, I placed my unsteady hands on the keyboard and pushed forwards at a much slower pace. I made it through a passage of deadly darts, and all that remained was a small stretch of hallway before the exit. 117. I hobbled forwards, sobbing at the blazing sensation in my left ankle, and the massive amount of blood loss, no doubt. My character was waddling at a glacial pace. 059. Suddenly, the walls of the passageway started to move inwards. They were closing on my character. They were closing on me. Not like this, I whimpered. Being compressed between two walls seemed like a death too excruciating to possibly imagine. 041. I was confident that I could reach the door in less than 41 seconds, but I wasn't confident that I could reach the door before being crushed to death. 030. Just a few more steps. The walls were starting to touch my character's shoulders. I couldn't move quickly enough. I could feel the pressure against my real shoulders. I started to accept my fate, as pain coursed through my body. I heard cracking sounds in my joints, and I started to pull my arms inwards, attempting to save any other limbs from being mutilated. In a miraculous turn of events, the walls stopped moving. I found myself squeezing through the world's tiniest passage, but I hadn't been crushed. I was alive. 012. Just a few more steps. 008. A few more. 003. I made it. With 3 seconds to spare, I reached the door. The screen faded to black, then I found myself back in my character's house. I'd never been so happy to see an award on a video game. Plus 1,000 tokens. I cried joyously, frantically pulling out my phone and calling an ambulance. The rest of the night is a blur. I know I spent it in A&D. The problem is that I wasn't thinking clearly. I was in so much pain, and I'd lost so much blood. I forgot that I needed to keep playing the simulation. I'm trapped in the hospital. My left leg has been patched up, but it certainly isn't operational. I can already feel hunger pangs. And I slept for 10 hours, according to the nurse, but I'm so tired. I haven't eaten or slept in the game. I don't know how much longer I can leave my character unattended. I have two options: I get home to the real world, or I find a way to break this curse. Time is running out.